My sister handed me her baby at the dinner table like she was asking me to pass the salt. Just a small lift of her arms. A tired smile. A white blanket gathered under his chin. "Emma," Lauren said, "can you hold him for a minute? You've always been good with babies." The room went quiet in the way rooms do when everyone hears the cruelty but no one wants to be the first to name it. My fork was still in my hand. Michael sat beside me, his shoulder almost touching mine, but somehow farther away than anyone else at that table. My father sat at the head, where he always sat, underneath the old brass chandelier that made everything look warmer than it was. Lauren's baby was 6 weeks old. A boy. Tiny, soft. Still carrying that milky, folded smell newborns have, like they have not completely arrived in the world yet. His name was Caleb. Lauren had said it proudly when we came in, holding him against her chest in a pale gray wrap. "This is Caleb," she told us, as if presenting a miracle she had made all by herself. There was no husband beside her, no ring, no Ryan. Ryan had been somewhere on the edges of Lauren's life for nearly 2 years, sometimes in photos, sometimes at birthdays, sometimes with his arm around her waist in a way casual enough to deny later, but he was not at the dinner. When my mother asked lightly, "Is Ryan coming?" Lauren just smiled down at the baby and said, "Ryan and I were never that serious. This baby is mine." That's enough. And everyone accepted it, because Lauren had always known how to say things in a way that made questioning her feel rude. She had been saying for years that she did not need a husband to be a mother. At bridal showers, at brunches, in the kitchen while my mother rinsed wine glasses. "If I ever have a baby," she would say, "I'm doing it my way. I don't need a man to make that legitimate." People called her independent, brave, modern. I had called her that too. That night, I had brought Caleb a gift. A pale blue onesie, wrapped in tissue paper, tucked inside a small silver bag with white handles. I almost didn't buy it. I stood in the baby aisle for so long that a saleswoman asked if I needed help. I told her no. My fingers had frozen on the hanger, because the last time I had touched something that small, I had folded it into a drawer and shut the drawer like a coffin. 3 times, I had bought tiny things. 3 times, I had put them away. 3 times, my body had let go before my heart could. But Caleb was innocent. I knew that. So I bought the onesie, soft cotton, blue like a morning that had not been ruined yet. At dinner, Lauren looked beautiful in the exhausted way. New mothers can look beautiful when everyone has decided their exhaustion is sacred. Her hair was pulled back loosely. Her cheeks were bare. She wore a cream sweater and kept one hand over the baby even when someone else was talking. Michael had barely spoken since we arrived. Usually, he knew how to be pleasant with my family. He helped carry plates. He laughed at my father's dry jokes. He asked my mother about the garden, even though he never remembered the names of flowers. That night, he sat too still. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Wives notice silence before anyone else hears it. Caleb started fussing near the end of dinner, just as Lauren was cutting into her chicken. She looked down with a small sigh, the kind that invited sympathy. Then she turned to me. "Emma, can you hold him for a minute? You've always been good with babies." My mother looked at her plate. My father blinked. Michael's hand tightened around his glass. I smiled because that is what I had trained myself to do when something hurt in public. "Of course," I said. Lauren stood and passed him to me. For 1 second, his warm weight settled awkwardly against my forearm. Then his cheek found the inside of my wrist, and his crying stopped. The whole table made a soft sound. A little laugh. A relieved sigh. "See?" Lauren said. "Natural." The word went through me clean. Natural. As if losing babies had been unnatural. As if love was measured by how easily a child stopped crying in your arms. I looked down at Caleb. His lashes were dark against his cheeks. His little mouth opened once, searching for comfort, then closed again. The blanket slipped from his face. And I saw it. Not proof. Not certainty. Just a small, familiar thing. A cleft in the chin. A faint one. The kind that would deepen as he grew. The same soft dip I had traced with my thumb on Michael's face in our first year of marriage, when we still slept tangled together and woke up believing the day belonged to us. I stopped breathing for half a second. Then I told myself not to be cruel. Babies look like everyone and no one. Families see ghosts where there are only shadows. Grief can make a woman suspicious of happiness she did not get to keep. I lifted my eyes. My father was staring at the baby. Not smiling. Not soft. White. All the color had drained from his face so quickly that I thought, for one foolish second, he was having a stroke. His wineglass trembled in his hand. Red wine climbed the side, then fell back. "Dad?" Lauren said. "Are you okay?" He did not look at her. He looked at Michael. And then my father said, very quietly, "You told me it ended." No one moved. The chandelier hummed faintly above us. Caleb shifted in my arms, unaware that he had just split the table open. Michael did not say, "What are you talking about?" He did not laugh. He did not deny it. He only lowered his eyes. And that was the first answer. I looked from my father to my husband, then to my sister. Lauren's mouth had parted just slightly. Not in confusion, in fear. The kind of fear that comes when a secret has not been discovered, but recognized. I looked down at the baby again. At the little chin, at the soft mouth, at the hands curled like commas against the blanket. A child. A breathing, innocent child. And suddenly I knew that whatever had been hidden from me had not been hidden in the past. It was here. In my arms. My father cleared his throat, but no sound came out. Michael moved one hand toward me under the table, not yet touching, just reaching, and I thought of hospital rooms. I thought of his fingers wrapped around mine. I thought of all the times I had believed that grief had made him quiet. Maybe grief had not made him quiet. Maybe guilt had. Lauren swallowed. "Dad," she said again, sharper this time. "What are you talking about?" My father looked at the baby in my arms, then at me, and in his face, I saw something I had spent my whole life trying to earn from him. Not love, not pride, fear. That was when I understood he had not just reacted to a face, he had reacted to a memory, to something he had chosen not to know. To something he had let sit beside me at dinner, dressed as family. My sister had asked me to hold her baby for 1 minute, but my father's face told me I had been holding a lie for much longer than that. If you have ever been the last person to learn the truth about your own life, write, "Seen," in the comments. Some silences only make sense to people who have sat inside them. Lauren had always been the kind of woman people forgave before she asked. She was beautiful in a way that made strangers soften their voices. She knew how to tilt her head when someone was disappointed, how to touch an arm at the right moment, how to cry without making her mascara run. When we were little, she broke my mother's crystal vase while trying on a scarf she was not supposed to touch. I remember the sound. Sharp, bright, final. I remember running into the hallway and seeing Lauren standing barefoot among the pieces, her mouth open, her eyes already wet. My father came in first. He looked at the floor, then at Lauren. Then he said, "She didn't mean it." I was 8. Old enough to understand that meaning, it was not always the point. A year later, Lauren told my cousins that I still slept with a nightlight. She said it at Thanksgiving, over mashed potatoes, with a giggle in her voice. Everyone laughed. I did not cry, until I got to the bathroom. My father found me there, sitting on the closed toilet seat, my knees pulled to my chest. "Emma," he said, "tired already? Don't make everything so dramatic." Lauren had embarrassed me. I was the drama. That was how it worked in our house. Lauren could spill something, and people would bring towels. I could bleed quietly and be told not to stain the room. Lauren was not cruel every day. That would have been easier. She was kind when kindness made her beautiful tea when I had cramps, curled hair before school dances, a hand in photographs, but her warmth always needed witnesses. She hugged me at funerals. She held my hand in photographs. She always stood close enough to look protective, never close enough to give me warmth. My mother saw more than she said. I think mothers often do. But my father belonged to Lauren in a way I stopped trying to change. At school plays, he brought her flowers. At mine, he brought his phone. When Lauren got a B in chemistry, he said the teacher was too strict. When I got an A- in history, he asked why it was not an A. I grew up thinking love was a room where someone else had already taken the best chair. Then I met Michael. He was not the kind of man who impressed a room quickly. He had no polished family name, no dramatic job title, no shining confidence. He worked in logistics for a medical supply company and wore the same watch every day because his grandfather had given it to him. But he listened. That was what undid me. At a friend's backyard barbecue, I mentioned once that I hated lilies because the smell reminded me of funeral homes. 2 weeks later, when he brought me flowers, they were tulips. Yellow ones. No one had ever remembered something small about me and treated it like it mattered. On our 4th date, the handle on my apartment door came loose. I laughed it off. Michael came over the next day with a small toolbox and fixed it while I made coffee. He did not make a speech about it. He did not stand back waiting to be praised. He just tightened the screws, tested the handle twice, and said, "There, that should hold. That should hold." For years, I thought that was what he was. A man who held. When he asked me to marry him, it was in my kitchen, rain tapping the window, pasta boiling over because he forgot to lower the heat. He dropped the ring box, cursed under his breath, then laughed so hard I laughed too. I said yes before he finished asking. Lauren cried at the engagement party. Real tears, everyone said. She loves her sister so much, my mother whispered. But when Lauren hugged me, her mouth near my ear, she said, I didn't think he'd actually do it in the kitchen. There was a smile in her voice. Small enough to deny, sharp enough to remember. Michael pulled me close that night and said, "Don't let her get to you." I leaned into him. "I don't," I lied. He kissed the top of my head. "You have me now." And for the first time in my life, I believed there was a place where Lauren could not reach me. A place that belonged to me because someone had chosen me without being asked to perform kindness in front of anyone. Lauren could survive me being sad. She could survive me being quiet. What she could not survive was me being chosen without trying. I did not know that then. I only knew that when Michael and I bought our first small house, Lauren walked through it slowly, touching the counters, peering into the empty second bedroom. "This is cute," she said. That word again. Cute. Not beautiful. Not warm. Not yours. Cute. Michael came in, carrying a box of dishes, and kissed my shoulder as he passed. Lauren saw it. A small thing. Nothing dramatic. Just a husband kissing his wife in the doorway of a house that did not need an audience. Her face changed so quickly most people would have missed it. I did not. But I told myself I was being dramatic. That old lesson still lived in me. And sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones our families teach us to repeat to ourselves. For the first 2 years, our happiness was ordinary in the best way. Sunday groceries, coffee in chipped mugs, his socks on the floor, my books on both nightstands because he said I read like I was nesting. We talked about children as if they were somewhere ahead of us, waiting politely. Not a question of if, only when. We painted the small second bedroom, a soft green, before I was ever pregnant. Michael said it was practical. Neutral, he said, rolling paint on the wall. I watched him from the doorway. Neutral? He smiled. For whoever shows up. I loved him so much in that moment it embarrassed me. Whoever shows up. As if love was already waiting with the light on. The first pregnancy lasted 11 weeks. Long enough for me to download an app that compared our baby to fruit. Long enough for Michael to put one hand on my stomach in the mornings before getting out of bed. Long enough for me to stand in a store with a pair of tiny socks in my palm and feel foolishly, dangerously blessed. Then there was blood. Then there was a room with a paper sheet beneath me. Then a doctor's voice, careful and kind in a way that made me hate kindness. Michael held my hand with both of his. He cried, after the doctor left. Not loudly. He sat in the chair beside the bed, bent forward, my hand pressed to his mouth, and his shoulders shook. I remember thinking, we will survive this, because he is here. The second time, we told fewer people. No fruit app. No socks. No paint samples. I moved quietly through the early weeks like joy was a glass I might break by touching. At 9 weeks, I lost that baby too. Michael came home from work and found me sitting on the bathroom floor. He knelt beside me. He wrapped me in a towel. He said, "I'm here." But his voice was different, thinner, as if part of him had stepped back from the edge and was watching from a safer distance. The third pregnancy happened almost a year later. By then, hope felt less like a sunrise and more like a match struck in a storm. I did not tell Lauren. I did not tell my parents. Michael and I kept it between us, the way people keep a candle cupped between their hands. At 7 weeks, we saw a heartbeat. At 8 weeks, I bought one white blanket. Just one. I told myself it was not tempting fate. It was letting myself be human. At 10 weeks, the heartbeat was gone. There are losses that make sound. Screaming. Breaking. Doors slamming. And there are losses that make everything quiet. That one made everything quiet. I came home from the hospital and went straight to the second bedroom. The green walls were still there. The white blanket was folded on the chair. I picked it up, folded it again, then again. Then I placed it in the bottom drawer of the dresser and closed the drawer slowly, as if moving too fast might wake something I had already lost. Michael stood behind me. For a moment, I thought he would come close. He did not. He stayed in the doorway. "I don't know what to do," he said. I wanted to say, "Neither do I." I wanted to say, sit beside me anyway. Instead, I nodded, because I was so tired of needing things no one knew how to give. After that, Michael began leaving me in ways small enough to forgive. Late nights at work, long showers, phone calls taken in the hallway. A face that went blank when I cried, not because he did not care, but because caring required him to stay inside a room he wanted to escape. Michael did not leave me all at once. He started by staying late at work, then by answering calls in the hallway, then by becoming quiet in the rooms where I needed him most. When I asked if he was okay, he kissed my forehead and said, "I'm just tired." Tired became his country, a place he went where I could not follow. Lauren came by more often after the third loss. She brought soup in glass containers. She folded laundry. She sat at the end of my bed and touched my ankle through the blanket. "You don't have to be strong with me," she said. It sounded beautiful. It always sounded beautiful. My mother praised her. My father said, "Lauren has really stepped up." Michael said nothing. At first, I was grateful. I was too hollow to be suspicious. Grief makes you generous with people who stand near you. You call their presence love, because you cannot bear to think it might be something else. One evening, I woke from a medicated sleep and heard voices in the kitchen. Lauren's voice. Low, soft. Michael's laugh. Not loud, not happy exactly, but lighter than anything I had heard from him in weeks. I lay still. The bedroom door was half open. Lauren said, "You don't always have to be the strong one." Michael answered, "I'm not." She said, "I know." 2 words. That was all. I closed my eyes. I told myself I was relieved he had someone to talk to. I told myself good sisters help. I told myself a man grieving beside another person was not betrayal. Sometimes you do not ignore the first warning because you are foolish. Sometimes you ignore it because believing it would take the last wall of your life down with it. Lauren did not invade my marriage like a thief in the night. She came carrying soup. That was the genius of it. Nobody suspects the woman holding a casserole dish. She texted me first. "How are you feeling? Do you need groceries? Sleep if you can. I'll check on Michael too." Then, gradually, the messages shifted. Not away from me. Around me. To him. "How are you holding up? You don't have to be strong every second. Come by if the house feels too heavy." I saw one of them once. Michael's phone lit up on the coffee table while he was in the shower. Lauren's name. That sentence. "Come by if the house feels too heavy." I stared at it until the screen went dark. When Michael came back, hair damp, towel around his neck, I asked, "Lauren texted you?" He glanced at the phone. "She's just checking in. On you?" He rubbed the towel through his hair. "She knows you're hurting. She knows I'm worried." It was a good answer. That was the problem. Most lies do not begin as impossible things, they begin as answers that almost fit. Lauren's apartment was 15 minutes from our house. A 1-bedroom in a restored building with exposed brick and tall windows. She had plants in brass pots and velvet chairs no one actually sat in. It looked like a place designed for people to say, "You're doing so well." Michael started helping her with things. A shelf that needed mounting. A tire that needed air. A box that was too heavy. Lauren always asked in a way that made saying no feel unkind. Only if it's not too much. "Don't worry if you're busy. I hate bothering you." Michael liked being useful there. I could feel it. At home, usefulness had become complicated. He could not fix my body. He could not tighten the screws on loss. He could not paint over the second bedroom and make it harmless again. At Lauren's, he could carry a box and be thanked. He could open a jar and be smiled at. He could sit on a clean couch, in a room with no white blanket folded in a drawer. Lauren gave him the easiest version of himself. And he followed it. Ryan was still around then, in the way fog is around. Visible from a distance. Gone when you reached for it. Lauren posted a photo of his hand around a wineglass across from hers. Another of them at a rooftop bar, her head tipped toward his shoulder. When my mother asked if it was serious, Lauren laughed. "Ryan is sweet. But I'm not building my life around a man." Then she would add the line she loved. "I don't need a husband to be a mother." Everyone admired it, my father especially. He liked strength when it did not cost him anything. I remember one dinner where Lauren said it, and Michael looked down at his plate. Just for a second, I noticed. I always noticed. But by then, noticing had become a private punishment. I had no proof. Only small pieces that made me feel ugly for collecting them. A late-night text. A shirt that smelled faintly of Lauren's apartment candle, cedar and orange peel. Michael coming home with a looseness in his face that disappeared when he saw me awake. Lauren touching his arm while talking to me. Not long. Never long. Just enough. Once, at my parents' anniversary lunch, Lauren stood beside Michael near the kitchen island. She laughed at something he said and placed her hand against his chest. A friendly touch. A sisterly touch. A touch no one else would call anything. Michael stepped back. Too late. I saw it. Lauren saw me seeing it, and she smiled. Not triumphantly. That would have been merciful. She smiled with concern. She said, you look pale. Are you okay? My mother turned. My father looked over his glasses. Michael looked at me. Suddenly, I was the fragile one again. The dramatic one. The woman who could not be trusted with the evidence of her own eyes because grief had made her sensitive. I said, I'm fine. Lauren came around the island and hugged me. In front of everyone. Her perfume was soft against my cheek. I worry about you, she whispered. Maybe she did. Maybe some part of her did worry. Lauren was not empty. That would have been easier. She had feelings. She just never seemed to know what to do with them when they got in the way of what she wanted. She could cry for me and still envy me. She could bring soup and still take my husband's calls in the dark. She could stand inside my pain, warming her hands over it, and call that love. The first time Michael did not come home until after midnight. He said there had been a shipping delay at work. The second time, a flat tire. The third, he did not bother with details. Please, he said, standing in the kitchen while I sat at the table, both of us too tired to fight. I can't do this tonight. I wanted to ask, do what? Be married? Be honest? Be here? Instead I looked at his hands. Those hands had once held mine like I was breakable in a way he intended to protect. Now they hung at his sides, useless. Somewhere across town, I imagined Lauren's apartment glowing warm. No hospital bills on the counter. No drawer closed like a coffin. No wife asking questions he did not want to answer. There are women who steal with red lipstick and perfume. Lauren stole with soup cooling on the stove. She stole with soft messages. She stole by standing exactly where my husband was weakest and calling it comfort. My father saw Michael leaving Lauren's building before I knew anything for certain. It was a Tuesday morning in March, cold enough that breath showed in the air. Robert Parker had an appointment near Lauren's neighborhood and stopped for coffee at a bakery 2 doors down from her building. He told me this much later, when the truth had already done its damage and explanations came limping behind it. He had just stepped back onto the sidewalk when the front door of Lauren's building opened. Michael came out. Same navy shirt he had worn the day before, wrinkled at the waist. Hair damp near the temples, like he had washed his face quickly and run wet hands through it. For a moment, neither man moved. I tried to imagine my father's face. Not shocked exactly. Robert had never been an easy man to shock. He was a man who organized the world into categories he could manage. Bills, birthdays, family dinners, acceptable mistakes, unacceptable embarrassment. Michael stood there holding his car keys. My father said, "What are you doing here?" Michael answered too quickly. "Lauren called me late. She'd had too much to drink." Ryan wasn't answering. I drove her home and stayed on the couch. A neat story. Too neat. My father looked at the windows above them, then back at Michael. "Did Emma know?" Michael hesitated. That hesitation should have been enough. But some fathers only need certainty when the truth would hurt their favorite child. "She was asleep," Michael said. "I didn't want to wake her. She's been through enough." There it was, the perfect shield. My pain. Used as the reason to keep me blind. My father stood on that sidewalk with the truth close enough to touch, and he chose not to lift his hand. My father had always believed a family could survive anything as long as no one said the worst thing out loud. He was not a man who liked scenes. He liked closed doors, polite voices, and family dinners where everyone knew which truths to leave untouched. With Lauren, silence had always been easy. When she came home past curfew, he called it independence. When she hurt someone, he called it honesty. When she cried, he called everyone else too harsh. With me, silence was expected. I was the daughter who understood, the daughter who stepped back, the daughter who could be trusted to make less noise with her wounds. So when Michael used my grief as a reason not to tell me the truth, my father accepted it because it fit the story he had always preferred. Emma was fragile, Lauren was complicated, and peace was whatever kept the family photograph from cracking. He later told me he did not know. And maybe that was true. He did not know everything. He did not know about the messages. The late nights. The apartment that had become easier for my husband to enter than our bedroom. He did not know about the pregnancy yet, but he knew enough to be afraid of knowing more. He told himself silence was mercy. But mercy that only protects the guilty has another name. On that sidewalk, my father looked at Michael and said, "Don't make me regret believing you." Michael nodded. "Yes, sir. Sir. I hate that part most. The respect. The performance. The way men can wrap lies in manners and call them honorable." My father drove away. He did not call me. He did not ask Lauren. He did not tell my mother. He decided to wait until he was sure, which is what people say when they want time to make cowardice sound thoughtful. Weeks passed. Lauren announced her pregnancy in my parents' living room. She did it after Sunday lunch, while my mother was clearing plates and my father was pretending not to check his phone. "I have news," Lauren said. She placed one hand on her stomach. Not dramatically. Lauren never needed much. My mother dropped a napkin. My father looked up. I smiled because that is what sisters are supposed to do when sisters announce miracles. Michael was beside me. His fork was still in his hand. Lauren said, "I'm pregnant." My mother cried first, then laughed, then cried again. I stood and hugged Lauren. Her body was warm under the loose blouse. I remember thinking she smelled like lavender and something metallic, like rain on a railing. "Ryan," my mother asked, "careful." Lauren stepped back and gave a small shrug. "Ryan and I aren't really that. I'm doing this on my own." My father's eyes moved to Michael. Michael looked down. I saw it. But I did not understand it. Lauren continued, "I know it's not traditional, but I've always said I don't need a husband to be a mother." There it was. The line she had laid down for years like a road leading to this room. My mother took her hand. "You're brave," she whispered. Lauren cried. My father stood and kissed her forehead. Michael excused himself to the bathroom. I remember following him with my eyes. I remember wondering if my pregnancy losses made him sad around other people's good news. That is what I thought. I was still kind enough to make his silence about grief. When he returned, his face was washed. His eyes were red. He took my hand on the couch and held it. The old way, the hospital way. I squeezed back. I thought we were surviving someone else's joy together. I did not know I was sitting between the father of Lauren's child and the man who had chosen not to warn me. I did not know my whole family had already begun rehearsing normal. And Robert Parker, my father, sat in his leather chair with one hand on the armrest and told himself he had done the right thing. Because nothing had been proven. Because Emma had suffered enough. Because Lauren was delicate in ways he never admitted Emma could be. Because men like my father often confuse peace with silence, as long as the silence costs someone else. Back at that dinner table, after my father said, "You told me it ended," the room did not explode. That would have been easier. No one screamed. No one stood. No plates shattered. The truth entered quietly and took a seat. I was still holding Caleb. His cheek rested near my wrist. His breath came in soft, uneven puffs. He smelled like milk and clean cotton. A baby does not know when he is evidence. That was the thought that saved me from dropping him. He had no part in the ugliness that made him. He had not asked to be born into a room full of adults who had failed one another. So, I held him carefully, more carefully than I had ever held anything. Michael stared at the table. Lauren's smile had thinned into something brittle. My mother looked from face to face, not understanding yet but feeling the shape of disaster. "Robert," she said slowly, "what does that mean?" My father pressed his lips together. He had spent a lifetime believing control was the same as character. Now one sentence had betrayed him before anyone else could. Lauren gave a short laugh. It sounded wrong. "Dad's confused," she said. "He's tired." Caleb had a long night. We all had a long night. She reached for the baby. I looked at her hands. My sister's hands were perfect. Pale nails, thin gold ring, on one finger, no wedding band. The hands of a woman everyone had praised for doing motherhood alone. I placed Caleb back into her arms. Gently. I made sure his head was supported. Even then. Even in that moment. Because the child was innocent. Lauren clutched him too tightly for a second, then loosened when he stirred. Michael moved beside me. His hand found mine under the table. It was almost instinct. Maybe he thought touch could pull me back into the old version of myself. The wife who listened. The wife who waited until they were alone. The wife who turned pain into private accommodation. His fingers closed around mine, and I saw every room at once. The hospital room after the first miscarriage. His hands wrapped around me like prayer. The bathroom floor after the second, his hand smoothing my wet hair. The doorway after the third, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. And now this. His hand under my father's table while his son lay in my sister's arms. I pulled away, slowly, so everyone saw it. Then I said, "Don't touch me while your son is in her arms." My mother made a sound like she had been struck. Lauren whispered, "Emma." Michael closed his eyes. Not because I was wrong, because I was right. My father pushed his chair back. "Emma, not here." I looked at him. There are moments when a person you have tried to please your whole life becomes very small. Not because they shrink, because your need for them does. "Then where, Dad?" I asked. My voice did not shake. I almost wish it had. Maybe then someone could have called it emotion instead of truth. "In whatever room you used when you decided I could survive the lie better than Lauren could survive the shame." He flinched. "Good." Lauren started crying then. Softly at first, the old way. The way that usually made people turn toward her. But no one moved. Not even my mother. Michael said, "Emma, please." I looked at him once. Only once. There are men who ask for mercy before they offer honesty. I stood. The chair legs scraped the floor. Caleb began to fuss in Lauren's arms. My mother said my name. I picked up my purse. The pale blue gift bag was still on the side chair where I had placed it when we arrived. Tissue paper folded neatly on top. Tag still blank because I had not known what to write. I looked at it. That small blue onesie, bought with shaking hands. I left it there. Not because Caleb did not deserve softness. Because I could not carry one more thing out of that room that had been touched by their lie. Lauren sobbed once. "Emma, wait." I paused at the doorway. Behind me, the dining room held its breath. I did not turn around. I said, "I have waited through 3 graves no one else could see. Don't ask me to wait through this too." Then I walked out. Outside, the air was cold enough to hurt. I stood on the porch under the yellow light, my keys in my hand, and for a few seconds I could not remember which button unlocked my car. Through the window, I could see them still sitting there. My family, my husband, my sister holding a child with my husband's chin. My father staring at his plate like shame might disappear if he did not look directly at it. No one followed me. That was the final kindness of that night. Or maybe the final cruelty. I drove home without music. At every red light, I looked at my hands on the steering wheel and remembered the warm weight of Caleb against my arm. By the time I reached our house, I did not cry. I went inside. The house was dark. Michael's shoes were by the door from earlier that day. His jacket hung on the chair. His coffee mug sat in the sink. Evidence of an ordinary marriage. That was what hurt. Lies do not always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes they look like 2 toothbrushes in a cup. A half-used carton of milk. A pillow still shaped by the head of the man who betrayed you. I walked to the kitchen table and sat down. Then I opened the drawer where we kept bills, medical records, receipts, warranty papers. I did not know what I was looking for yet. Only that men like Michael lied with their mouths. But careless men often left fingerprints where they thought women were too broken to look. The letter arrived 4 days later. White envelope. Clinic logo in the upper corner. Our address printed cleanly across the front. For a moment, I thought it was mine. Another reminder from another doctor. Another bill. Another folded piece of paper from a place where I had learned to lose things quietly. Then I saw Lauren's name. Lauren Parker. Care of Michael Hayes. Our address. I stood at the mailbox with the envelope in my hand, while the late afternoon sun lay flat across the street. A neighbor walked her dog past me and waved. I waved back. It is strange what the body can do while the soul is being cut open. Inside, I placed the envelope on the kitchen table and sat across from it. I did not open it right away. I made tea. I let it steep until it went bitter. I washed 1 spoon. I wiped a counter that was already clean. Then I sat down again. The paper opened with a soft tear. Inside was a billing notice and a confirmation sheet from Lauren's first prenatal visit. Most of it was routine. A balance due, a date, a clinic phone number printed in pale blue at the bottom. Then I saw the line that made the room tilt. Emergency contact, Michael Hayes. Relationship, partner. Mailing address, ours. Our house. Our street. The same address where I had folded my own discharge papers 3 days after losing our 3rd child. I read it once. Then again. The letters did not change. The date of Lauren's first appointment was printed near the top. I knew that date. Of course I knew that date. It was 3 days after my 3rd miscarriage. 3 days after Michael had stood in our bedroom doorway and told me he did not know what to do. 3 days after I folded the white blanket into the bottom drawer. 3 days after I had believed my husband was too broken to hold me. He had not been too broken. He had been elsewhere. I pulled my own discharge papers from the drawer. I do not know why. Maybe some part of me needed the dates to be wrong. Maybe I wanted time itself to show mercy where people had not. But the papers matched. Same week. Same month. My body had been letting go while Lauren's body was beginning. Michael had driven me home from the hospital, with one hand on the wheel and the other resting near mine, not touching. I had thought he was afraid of breaking me. Now I wondered if he had been afraid I would feel the distance already living in his skin. That night, I had lain in bed facing the wall, while he stood in the bathroom with the door half closed. I remembered the water running too long. I remembered the low sound of his voice. I had thought he was calling his office. Maybe he was calling her. Maybe she was already late. Maybe my sister had stood in her bathroom, with a plastic test in her hand, while I lay in mine, bleeding through the end of another future. I pressed my palm against my mouth, not to stop myself from crying, but to stop myself from making a sound that might make the house feel real again. Because suddenly every room had changed. The kitchen was not our kitchen. The bedroom was not our bedroom. Even the second room with the warm white walls waiting beneath old green paint was not empty anymore. It had been full of someone else's secret before I ever knew to look. There are moments when pain arrives so clearly that crying feels too messy for it. I placed both hands flat on the table. The same table where Michael and I had eaten soup from one pot during our first winter in the house, because we had not bought enough bowls. The same table where he had once spread out insurance forms and said, "We'll figure this out." The same table where I now sat with proof that while I had been bleeding out a future, he had been signing himself into my sister's. Not because he loved her. Maybe he did not. That was the ugly part. It might not even have been love. It might have been cowardice, need, weakness. A man reaching for the nearest warm room because the room he had promised to stay in had become too full of grief. The letter came because Michael had used our home address as the emergency contact address on Lauren's first prenatal form. Not because he loved her. Because careless men often leave fingerprints where they think women are too broken to look. I opened the drawer beside me. Inside were my own medical papers. Follow-up instructions. Lab results. A bill with a corner bent from where I had gripped it too hard after opening it. 2 pregnancies in the same month. Mine ending in a hospital room. Hers beginning with my husband's name beside it. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the table. Not forever yet. Just away from my skin. The pale circle it left behind looked indecent. Like my body still believed in something my mind had already buried. Michael had not come home since the dinner. He had texted, "Emma, please call me. We need to talk. I never wanted to hurt you." That last one made me laugh once. A small sound. Dry. Unrecognizable. People love saying they never wanted to hurt you after they have arranged every piece of the injury. Lauren had texted too. "Can we talk? Please don't punish the baby." As if that was what I was doing. As if my refusal to swallow betrayal quietly was an attack on a child. My father called twice. I did not answer. My mother left one message. She was crying. "I don't understand what's happening," she said. "Please come home, so we can talk." Home. That word. My parents' house had never been home in the way a place should be. It had been a stage where Lauren knew all the light cues. But I went back. Not that night. The next. I put the letter into a clean envelope. I placed my wedding ring inside with it. Then I added one more thing. A photograph from our second year of marriage. Michael and me in the green room before it became a room we avoided. He was standing beside the dresser, one hand on my waist, smiling toward the camera. That old smile. The one before guilt learned his face. I don't know why I took the photo. Maybe because I needed to remind him that there had been a man I loved before he became the man I was leaving. Maybe because I needed to remind myself that I had not imagined the good. Betrayal is worse when the good was real. If it was all fake, you can hate cleanly. But when someone once loved you well, and then chose to wound you anyway, grief has to walk through every beautiful room before it can find the exit. I drove to my father's house with the envelope on the passenger seat. The blue evening settled over the road. Porch lights came on one by one. Families were eating dinner behind lit windows, passing plates, asking children about homework, living inside ordinary trust. At a red light, I looked at the envelope, then at my bare ring finger. I was not going there to beg. I was not going to ask Michael why, as if the right explanation could turn the knife into something else. I was going to put the truth back on the table where they had tried to feed me a lie. My father opened the door before I knocked. He looked older than he had 2 nights before. Not softer, just less polished. "Emma," he said. I stepped inside. The house smelled like roasted garlic and furniture polish. The same smell every family dinner had carried since I was a child. A smell that said nothing bad happens here. That was the lie houses tell best. Michael stood in the living room. He looked as if he had not slept. His shirt was untucked. His eyes were red. Once, that would have pulled me toward him. Not anymore. Lauren sat on the couch with Caleb in her arms. She wore no makeup. Her hair was tied back. She looked small and frightened, and almost believable. Almost. My mother sat in the armchair near the window, twisting a tissue between her fingers. No one said anything, so I did. "I'm here because the truth keeps being handled in rooms I'm not allowed to stand in." My father closed the door behind me. "Emma," he said carefully, "we all need to calm down." I looked at him. I am calm. That was what scared him. I walked to the coffee table and placed the envelope down. Not thrown. Placed. Lauren's eyes dropped to the clinic logo I had left visible through the flap. Her face changed. Michael saw it too. He took a step forward. "Emma, I can explain." "Don't," I said. "One word." He stopped. I opened the envelope and removed the letter. I laid it flat on the table. Michael's name. Lauren's appointment. Our address. The room tightened around it. My mother leaned forward, hand over her mouth. My father looked away. Lauren began to cry. Not loudly. She had always known how to cry beautifully. "I didn't plan for it to happen like this," she whispered. "No," I said. "You planned for it not to be found." Michael flinched. Then he said the line I knew was coming, because weak men often mistake their pain for permission. I was grieving too. I looked at him. For a second, I saw him in the hospital chair after our first loss, his face wet, my hand pressed to his mouth. I let that memory stand between us. Then I answered it. "Then you should have grieved beside me. Not inside my sister's apartment." My mother made a broken sound. Lauren shifted Caleb against her shoulder. "He was hurting," she said. "You were both hurting. I was just trying to—" "Help?" I asked. She closed her mouth. I almost laughed. That word had covered so much. Soup, texts, late nights. A hand on his arm. An apartment where my husband could forget the woman waiting at home with an empty drawer. Lauren wiped her cheek. "I chose this baby," she said, voice shaking. "I didn't ask Michael for anything. I never asked him to leave you." I looked at Caleb. His little fist rested against her sweater. He yawned, mouth opening wide, then tucked his face into her chest. Innocent. Completely. "No," I said softly. "You chose my husband when I was losing our child. The baby is innocent. You are not." Lauren sobbed. This time, my father did not move toward her. That was new. Michael put both hands on his head. "I made a mistake," he said. I turned to him. "A mistake is forgetting milk. A mistake is missing an exit. You slept with my sister while I was recovering from losing our baby. Then, you let me bring a gift to your son." He lowered his hands. "I didn't know how to tell you." "Of course you didn't," I said. "Telling me would have required you to become honest before you were caught." My father finally spoke. "We can still handle this privately." There it was. The family instinct. Close the curtains. Lower the voices. Protect the name. Make the injured person smaller, so the guilty can stay comfortable. I turned to him. "You already handled it privately. That was the problem." He looked at me for a long moment. "I didn't know for sure." "I believe you." His eyes flickered. Maybe he thought belief was forgiveness. It was not. "You didn't have to know everything to protect me," I said. "You only had to care enough to ask." The words landed harder than I expected. My father sat down slowly, as if his knees had stopped trusting him. Lauren whispered, "Emma, please, don't make everyone hate me." There she was. At the center of her own fear. Not, "I hurt you." Not, "I betrayed you." Don't make everyone hate me. I looked at my sister. For a moment, I saw us as children. Her bare foot in broken crystal. Me crying in a bathroom. My father's voice choosing the same daughter over and over until all of us knew our roles by heart. "I don't have to make anyone hate you," I said. "The truth can do what it needs to." Michael stepped closer. "Emma, I love you." The sentence arrived too late to mean what it used to. I reached into the envelope and took out my wedding ring. His eyes went to it. I placed it on the table beside the letter. The sound was small. Metal against wood. But the room heard it. You can keep the man who touched you while I was burying our children, I said to Lauren. But you don't get to keep my silence too. No one answered. There was nothing left to argue with. Caleb stirred and began to fuss. Lauren bounced him gently, crying into his hair. I did not hate that child. That mattered to me. Even then. Especially then. Because I knew what it felt like to be handed someone else's shame and expected to carry it quietly. I would not do that to him. I looked at him once more. Then I turned toward the door. Michael said my name. Not loudly. Not desperately. Just the way he used to say it when he woke before me and wanted me to come back to bed. For 1 second, the sound found the old wound. Then I kept walking. Outside, the night had turned cold again. My father followed me onto the porch. Emma, he said. I stopped at the steps. Behind him, through the window, I could see my mother bent over the coffee table, reading the letter. Lauren on the couch. Michael standing alone. My father's voice broke a little. I thought I was sparing you. I looked at him under the porch light. No, I said. You were sparing yourself the kind of father you would have had to become. He had no answer. I went down the steps. This time, when I reached my car, my hands did not shake. Divorce is quieter than people think. At least mine was. There were no screaming courthouse scenes. No dramatic collapse in a lawyer's office. Just paper, signatures, boxes, the slow, humiliating division of a life into his and mine. 2 sets of plates, 1 dining table, the couch we bought on sale after arguing for 20 minutes about color. Michael cried once during mediation. I watched him press his thumb and forefinger into his eyes. There had been a time when his tears could move me, across any room. Now they only made me tired. I did love you, he said in the hallway afterward. I believed him. That was the terrible part. I know, I said. He looked up. I took my coat from the back of the chair. You just loved yourself more when it got hard. He did not follow me. Lauren sent messages for months. Some apologies. Some explanations. Some photographs of Caleb I did not open. My mother begged me not to cut off the whole family over one terrible mistake. I told her it had not been one mistake. It had been a system. I loved her. I still did not go to Sunday dinner. My father asked to meet me in a small coffee shop halfway between his house and mine. He arrived early. Of course he did. Robert Parker had always believed punctuality could stand in for character. He looked smaller in public, without his dining table in front of him. We sat across from each other near the window. For a long time, he stirred coffee he did not drink. I didn't know for sure, he said. I know. I should have asked. Yes. He swallowed. I failed you. I looked out the window at a woman crossing the street, with a little girl in a yellow coat. The girl jumped over a puddle. Her mother laughed and took her hand. I turned back to my father. You failed me before that morning, I said. That was just the first time your silence had a face. His eyes filled. I had seen my father angry, proud, disappointed. I had rarely seen him ashamed. It did not heal me. But it told me the truth had reached him. That was something. Not enough, but something. He said, "Can I fix it?" I shook my head. No, but you can stop asking me to make it easier for you to remember. After that, I learned distance. Not the dramatic kind. The adult kind. The kind where you do not slam every door, but you stop leaving your keys under the mat. I changed the locks on my house. Repainted the second bedroom. Not blue. Not pink. Not green. A warm white. Then I turned it into an office with a reading chair by the window and shelves that held books instead of folded ghosts. The white blanket stayed in the drawer for a while. Then one Saturday, I took it out. I washed it, dried it in the sun, folded it once, only once, and placed it in a donation box, with baby clothes from other women whose stories I would never know. I did not feel free. Not right away. Freedom is not always a door bursting open. Sometimes it is just a room where nothing lies to you anymore. A year after that dinner, Lauren sent me a photograph. I almost deleted it. Then I opened it. Caleb sat in a high chair with cake on his hands and frosting on his cheek. One candle leaned crookedly in front of him. Lauren's hand was visible near the tray, steadying a plate. He was laughing. His little chin had deepened. The resemblance was still there. Then I saw it. Not on him. He had outgrown it months ago. The pale blue onesie was folded on the gift table behind the high chair, tucked beside a stack of birthday cards and a small silver bag with white handles. Lauren had kept it. For a moment, I could not move. That tiny piece of cotton had traveled farther than I had. From my shaking hands in a baby store, to a chair at the dinner table, to whatever drawer Lauren had placed it in after I walked out. I wondered if she had washed it. I wondered if she had held it up to Caleb when he was still small enough to fit inside it. I wondered if Michael had seen it and looked away. The thought hurt. But it did not destroy me. A year earlier, that blue onesie had felt like proof that the world could hand my tenderness to the wrong people and expect me to smile. Now it looked different. Still painful. Still mine in a way Lauren would never understand. But no longer powerful enough to call me back into that room. Caleb laughed in the photograph, frosting on his cheek. One hand lifted toward the candle like he believed every light in the world had been placed there for him. And I let him have that. He deserved one day untouched by what the adults had done. Lauren sent one message after the photo. Do you hate him? I stared at the words. Then I typed back. No. I know exactly who hurt me. It wasn't a child. I waited. Then I sent one more. He deserves truth. So did I. Lauren did not answer for a long time. When she finally did, it was only 3 words. I know that. Maybe she did. Maybe motherhood had taught her what sisterhood never could. Or maybe guilt had finally learned how to bite. Either way, I did not rush to forgive her. Some people want forgiveness because they are ready to stop feeling guilty. That does not mean you are ready to stop being wounded. I did not become the aunt who appeared at every birthday with a bright smile and a wrapped toy so everyone could say how strong I was. I did not punish Caleb either. I sent a book on his 2nd birthday. No note to Lauren. Just his name, Caleb. The child deserved things that were not heavy. Michael tried to come back twice. Once, he brought tulips. Yellow ones. The old kind. I stood in the doorway and remembered the man who had once brought them because I hated lilies. Then I remembered that memory is not a contract. I thought these were your favorite, he said. They were, I answered. He left them on the porch. I threw them away before they opened. If this story found you tonight, tell me where you're watching from and one thing you'll never stay silent about again. I still think about that dinner. Not every day, but sometimes. I think about the chandelier humming above us, the white plates, the untouched blue gift bag. My sister's arms reaching across the table, my father's face going white, Michael's hand searching for mine under the table, as if touch could turn back truth. For years, I thought betrayal had to arrive loudly. A slammed door, a stranger's perfume, a message found at midnight. But sometimes, betrayal arrives wrapped in a white blanket. Sometimes it is placed in your arms by someone smiling. Sometimes the truth is too small to speak, so it wears a child's face and waits for one guilty man to look up. My sister asked me to hold her baby for 1 minute. But my father's face told me what my marriage had been holding for months. A child, a lie, and a family willing to hand me both.